You are watching Dimensions of Disclosure 2019. And now, your MCs, Ben Chasteen and Rob Counts.
Hello, hey everybody! How you doing? Dimensions of Disclosure! Welcome! How's everyone doing? What a reception! You guys are the reason why we're here. Yes! So thank you guys, and we're going to be all around and hosting the entire event. So we have a busy schedule for. So do you guys know who your first speaker is? So your first speaker is Mike Waskosky, right? Yes. So actually, his speech is called "The Polarity of Disclosure: The Law of One and the War on Perspective." Okay. So it's definitely going to be a doozy, and we're just going to go over some. Basically, we designed these nice slides for you so you could read along. So Mike is the founder of the New Earth Network, a social networking site for higher consciousness communities, which offers easy ways to get more connected locally. So he has been a speaker for 2 major UFO conference events and is a speaker scholar on the Law of One raw material. He also manages one of the largest and most active ET disclosure meetups and CE5 teams in the USA, as well as spirituality and metaphysics communities in Colorado Springs. He's also a freelance digital marketing consultant, website and app developer by trade, and he offers technical consulting to many people in the UFO community. And he has a big announcement for an app that he just finished making that he's going to present here for you guys today. And I mean, who doesn't want that resume? That's a lot. So, right. All right, well, anyway, we're going to bring Mike Waskosky up. Everybody, so welcome him on stage. Thank you, guys. Hey, thanks for being here. Hello.
Can everybody hear me okay with this? All right. Yeah, everything they said. And how many people here have heard of the Law of One? So that's almost everybody. That's great. Yeah. And so I know the Law of One can kind of be confusing, and not a lot of people do a lot of lectures on the Law of One because it's so confusing sometimes to really know how to put some of these concepts together. It's really dense, really deep material, and so I thought I could go over some key points for you today. I really do think we are in a war on perspective. It's the way we want to look at things that is ultimately what the cabal and the good guys are fighting over, because this is a spiritual battle. You know, we have to learn to take the higher perspective and to actually be able to take the spiritual mantle and actually, evolve humanity in the right direction. So the basic things I'm going to talk about, I'm going to start out some of the exciting developments we've been going through in our history over the last year. Talk about the bigger picture of what's really been going on with what Corey Goode has called the proxy war, like a war between extraterrestrials that's being played out through people. And this goes back to the concept of spiritual warfare, and everything that we've been going through is on some level a kind of spiritual war. I'll talk about the Law of One's perspectives, the bigger pictures on why we need conflict, why we need duality, the catalyst that comes from that. And also the power we have to collectively shift consciousness and shift timelines with our own consciousness. And I'll give you some more recommendations on personal development and getting more involved in the community. So this is what I'm going to announce today. I just made an app called Mass Meditate. Can you guys see that? It's not on there yet. So this is not going to the screen. There you go. All right, this is what I'm announcing. Mass Meditate is the name of the app. It's on iOS and Android. I just released this a week ago. So basically, with this app, we can set reminders to join together in mass meditations from wherever we are. There hasn't been an app like this before. So, yeah. So one of the things I've been doing with this app is for example, the meditation we just had, I think at 11:11. Thank you all for participating. That was amazing. I think so. What I could do is take the video from that, and I could schedule it as a monthly mass meditation, so we can continue this mass meditation every single month at the same time together and continue that amplified effect. Another site I just finished, it's not an app, it's just the website. It's part of the New Earth Network social networking website I made, joindisclosure.org. This is ET disclosure focused site that you can post your groups on there. You can create your own group. Even if it's just like a Facebook group, you can post a link on there. It'll show up on the map for other people in your region. People can get notifications when you do post that if they're in the area. So it's a great way to get more connected. And I know a lot of people in these conferences, it's like, you really want to stay connected in this energy. You don't want to leave the energy. So I wanted to give more tools for people to be able to stay connected and not just have this be a one-time thing. Okay, so there's been a lot going on in the last year. There you go. Obviously, we've seen a lot of UFO stories in the mainstream media. It's been unprecedented. It's ramping up. It's amazing. But we're still calling it a partial disclosure because this is just a very, very tiny portion of the truth that's been coming out through like the New York Times and other organizations, mainstream media organizations. The Stars Academy has been doing a lot of this. People are kind of skeptical. Are they really going to get to the good stuff, or is this going to be? But it's been getting people to put the foot in the door and ask the questions, and I think that's a really good thing. We've been getting a lot of movement in this direction. We had a lot of leaks, the Admiral Wilson leaks coming out confirming I mean, this is the kind of thing that congressmen are going to start to look at more. Like, do we have a Majestic 12 organization? Is there a very compartmentalized, illegal, not under the control of Congress kind of group operating in order to maintain the secrecy? And that's obviously been going on, and it's just a matter of waking people up to that, and it's starting to happen more and more. We have obviously the Jeffrey Epstein thing. I'm sure many speakers are going to be talking about how crazy this is, everything going on. People are waking up to the cabal networks. And we have... It's not on now? Is that good? Is this one good? Okay. All right. I'll use this now. Yeah, and also the Storm Area 51 campaign was insane. It's like everyone's talking about Area 51 now. It started out as a joke, but then it started becoming more serious when everyone was realizing, oh, they really do want to organize. Oh, it's going to be a festival next month, apparently. Yeah. But I mean, at least the guy who's starting it, he was inspired by Bob Lazar. So he's at least on our side in this, and this isn't just going to be a big joke. I think people are really getting behind, we really need to do something to get our government to tell us the truth. But this is corresponding to some of the most unprecedented internet censorship we've ever seen. Like on YouTube, I don't know if you've noticed, it's like you search for something relevant. Now you actually do have to scroll down like 20 videos in order to see what you used to see a year ago come to the top on YouTube because of this heavy censorship that they've started to integrate in the tech sites. You don't really always notice it unless you're paying a lot of attention, but all the quality content, what we'd like to review is being pushed down by Google, YouTube, Facebook. So it's getting harder to get the message out, but I think it's because we're unstoppable that they know they had to do something, and this really can't be stopped, I don't think, all this information. So the law of one material basically has a quote that I like about the nature of partial disclosure. They did say in session 8 that we do have the ability to create UFOs. The United States government does have this ability, but that they're currently only being used for potential destructive use. At least these ones being talked about, that it seemed as though people were not wanting to use them for the benefit of humanity. And they said the technology your peoples possess at this time is capable of resolving each and every limitation which plagues your social memory complex at this present. It's like a society at this present nexus of experience. However, the concerns of some of your beings with distortions towards power cause these solutions to be withheld until the solutions are so needed that those with this distortion toward power can then become further distorted in the direction of power. So you can see that this kind of creates a duality already. Some people will allow a disclosure, but it's because they want more power, more control through this disclosure. Some people want disclosure to end the suffering of others, end all limitation that we're facing. So it's important to get this straight. Why do we want disclosure? It's to end human suffering, to create peace on earth and a wonderful civilization. Thanks. So the last 2 years I've been doing these. I've been also conducting a survey, commissioning a survey, asking the question to the general USA population, do you believe extraterrestrials are currently interacting with humanity? And the results have been pretty much the same every year I've tried. There's a little bit of movement in the maybe and not sure categories. The results have basically been about a little over 10% say, yes, I do believe. A little over 20% say maybe or I'm not sure. 40% say no, we got a lot of work to do. And then 30% say this is ridiculous. And I think there's been a slight amount of movement up from this is ridiculous up to no, and a slight amount of movement up from no to maybe. But the yes is still kind of hanging in there at the same amount over the last 2 years that I've conducted this survey. So it does seem like even though we're getting a lot more incredible news out in the media, it's not really converting people into serious researchers. So there is a lot more catalyst that needs to happen for people to actually start to wake up and be motivated by some of this information. So there's a lot of philosophical problems people have, though, with the full disclosure, and it could be this is why people think that a partial disclosure is important. Are people even ready? There's a lot of very dark realities. There's a lot of occult practicing, black magic practicing syndicate groups who are controlling a large portion of the world's wealth still. Obviously, there's human trafficking going on, massive amount of human trafficking. A slave trade has been very extensive for thousands of years, really. And there's a lot of elite involvement in that, and this is really difficult for people to deal with. That it could even extend into space. This could be a hierarchy of control that has been allowed to extend into other star systems even. According to Corey Good's information, and there's also a lot of strong evidence that there really are negative ET groups. So this is controversial for some people, but there's a lot of religious implications for that. People want to call it all demons, and then not even look at the possibility of positive extraterrestrials. So there's a lot of complex stuff going on. But the question of how do we even allow this to occur, it gets down to the heart of it. People they just want to block it out because it's too much. It's like, how do you even begin to process that this kind of evil could be allowed to exist on the planet? So people prefer to sweep it under the rug, and in the process of doing so, you're allowing it to continue. So we really do have to expose everything. And this... So that's what the Law of One, I think, helps a lot with, the philosophy of appreciating why duality is okay. This is 106 channeling sessions. You guys hopefully already know this. Done from 1981 to 1984. This was done under very strict channeling protocols. The channeler, Carl Ruckert, was a Christian. She was always trying to make sure that the entities who she would allow to speak through her were coming in the name of Christ, in the name of Jesus, and that unconditional love energy is very important for her to make sure that high vibration was maintained. And the entire team of people, were very strict about making sure that they were spiritually protecting their channeling area whenever they would channel. This is the most detailed and profound information I've ever come across. It's only in Q&A format too. That's another thing about it, that because it's only question and answer, it's free will preserving. There isn't some entity coming in with its own agenda. The agenda was set by Don Elkins, the questioner, who was a really smart physics professor, just asking incredible questions. And the way the concepts are presented is not always super easy because they're trying to be very, very precise. But so that's why I think we have to work a little bit harder than just reading it in order to break down. We really got to spend some time trying to dig in to understand some of this stuff. I'm also going to talk about Corey Good's testimony. I think it ties in really well. He's been saying that he was selected as a messenger for Blue Avians who identified themselves as the same Ra who communicated the Law of One. And I do believe this. I do think there's enough evidence to show this seems to be happening. But it's really interesting that his information fills in some of the gaps that were in the Law of One material. And it doesn't contradict any of it, too. That's also really hard. A lot of speakers who are kind of doing their own thing, they wind up saying things that I very quickly see. That's not entirely what the Law of One says. But Corey Good doesn't even seem like he's a serious student, but everything he's said so far does seem to line up very well. And this definitely clarified, his information clarified what the harvest might be that's talked about in the Law of One, the ascension event, basically. Corey has talked about, there's potentially a solar flash, solar activity that could come up in the near future that could lead to a much greater energy on Earth, conscious energy, conscious awareness, and that could also lead to much more ET contact coming in. And the Law of One does talk about that there will be advanced ETs that come in at what they call the time of harvest or the graduation in order to facilitate people going to the next level of evolution, basically making it so that it's not like because we're afraid or confused or something that we won't actually be able to make it. It's because of what we want, where our soul's at, what our choices are. Free will is so important to them. He's given us a lot more direction and focus. That's why I got started doing all the websites I was showing you. Corey Good inspired me to do all this stuff. And Corey's got a lot of opponents now, but it's like, you notice, all they could ever do is ad hominem attacks. It's just character attacks. And we're really seeking something that goes beyond that, that gets to the heart of the information, like analysis of the law of one correlations. So right now, there's a lot of choices we have to be making on what perspective we want to take. A lot of people are choosing, they just want to pursue this scientifically so they can kind of, be very cautious about how crazy they sound, But other people are just diving into the spiritual metaphysics stuff. And stuff like the law of one can seem like an undesirable way at first of trying to establish what the truth is, because it's difficult to verify the source. It's really difficult to trust something that's just spoken through somebody channeling. But I think that ultimately having a good way of hearing the truth, of knowing the truth through sources like this, is often more important than being able to prove the truth, because of the effects of hearing this, the effects of hearing the truth on seekers like us with strong intuition. We can figure out, we can piece things together once we have all the information. We don't need to measure everything in order to piece the puzzle pieces together. So we definitely need a lot of spiritual tools to undo our programming, to believe that we have no power. That's one of the biggest problems. We could rise up at any time if we could get over this programming. Thanks. I would say disclosure represents correcting all distortions, and there's basically different categories of distortions. The law of one refers to everything as a distortion. But specifically with disclosure, the distortions have been relating to, the fact that we have suppressed technology, or the fact that we don't have suppressed technology is essentially part of this. But even if you do get the technology out, there's a problem of perspective. Some people, will see it in a fearful way, or see something about the negative ETs having been involved as a very negative thing. And there's a lot of divide in the UFO community because of the way that we're looking at things. Through positive and negative perspectives. So this is a different type of distortion, the spiritual distortions that also have to be overcome. This is why positive ETs have always talked about spiritual advancement having to coincide with technological advancement. We can't just be given all this technology and still be at a very low level of advancement. There has to be these two sides of it, and to the unveiling process. The law of one has definitely talked about the same thing Corey Good has talked about with these waves of energy, this cosmic energy, the fourth density energies. And this, when I say density, that refers to a density of consciousness. It's not like some people talk about dimensions where it's like a different place. This is actually just a different density of consciousness, which I see as like a different way of looking at things, with more consciousness when you're looking at things. And the fourth density of consciousness, love is obvious. Love becomes so clear what we want. But in the third density of consciousness, we're still questioning it. We still have to make the choice, do we want to pursue love? But when we move into this higher energy, love is very, very apparent. And so there's this sharp increase, Ra says, as we move into this energy between the third density service to self people and the fourth density people coming in, the fourth density energies. So there's this increased contrast, there's this increased divide that's more apparent. And Corey says the negative people are becoming more negative, positive people are becoming the same, more positive. And people with mental disorders are going to face even more problems with those disorders, because these energies are very much contrasting with each other and forcing us to make a choice, really. One way, the law of one also clarifies it's okay to make a choice to serve yourself or serve others, love yourself, love others. You just have to make the choice. They say some love the light, some love the darkness. It is a matter of the unique and infinitely various creator choosing and playing among its experiences as a child upon a picnic. Some enjoy the picnic and find the sun beautiful, the food delicious, the games refreshing, and glow with the joy of creation. Some find the night delicious, their picnic being pain, difficulty, sufferings of others, and the examination of the perversities of nature. These enjoy a different picnic. All these experiences are available. It is free will of each entity which chooses the form of play, the form of pleasure. So, another way of looking at this duality that we're in, the law of one says that the negative polarity tries to potentiate that which is not. So they're actually playing with falsity. They're playing with lies. They're playing with illusions and deceptions in order to gain their momentum in their polarity. Whereas the positive polarity attempts to see through the illusion to the creator, seeing the creator in everyone. So the negative polarity depends upon the illusory separation betwixt the self and all other people. So why was this negativity even allowed to exist? Why did this even start? Well, they called this an experiment, and I talked about this last year in my presentation. This was a great experiment, and Corey Good also talked about it as a grand experiment, that the ETs were saying some of the genetic experimentation programs are part of a grand experiment. Basically by the galactic intelligence. The galaxy is basically a super intelligence in the same way that the sun is actually super intelligence. The galaxy kind of outlined the course of our evolution in a very, very broad archetypal way. But this experiment that was an experiment to separate the conscious from the unconscious mind so that we wouldn't have infinite awareness at all times, this allowed us to have a greater desire to pursue that which was unknown, to know that which was unknown. And this is talked about in like the Tao, the Tao Te Ching. Under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good because there is evil. And a more metaphysically scientific way that Ross says this is the purpose of polarity is to develop the potential to do work. It's just like a magnetic system. You have two different poles of the magnet, and only because of this polarity is more able to happen as a result of that magnetism. And they even go so far as to talk about war at one point in the material that a large portion of all progression on our Earth has as catalyst trauma. So even harsh trauma can serve a purpose and leading a person to recognize they want to do more work on themselves. They want to pursue love, even if it means the death in a war. They will be catalyzed in that direction. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're up against, what the Law of One calls the Orion group. People in this community have often called it the Draco, many associations to reptilians. They say the Orion group is basically made up of third, fourth, fifth, sixth density beings, very few of the sixth density beings, because of the sixth density, ultimately they have to reunify and see all as one again. So they have to flip polarity once they get there. But they say their numbers are 1/10 of ours, meaning that means the confederation of planets in the service of the infinite creator, which they say is 53 civilizations and are like the local part of our galaxy who have been working together to help us grow positively. So they're outnumbered 10 to 1. But their power is the same as ours ultimately because of the free will principles at play. They say the Law of One blinks neither at the light or the darkness. And the reason they call them the Orion group is because they've come from the Orion, the top echelon has come from the Orion stars from the Orion constellation. That doesn't mean that they're all from there. They're from throughout the galaxy. It's just the upper leadership is from there, just to clarify that. They say contact is made with those who call. This is when people are having negative thoughts, it's very often like a calling to the negative entities for, help me out. How do I have more negative thoughts? They say those upon the planetary sphere act as much as you do to disseminate the attitudes and philosophy that their particular understanding is, and in this case, it's the understanding of service to self. So the people who receive this most of this understanding from the Orion group become the elite. Through these elite, the attempt begins to create a condition whereby the remainder of the planetary entities are enslaved by their own free will. Also, and they say that what they're disseminating is attitudes and philosophy. It's really just about your attitude and your philosophy as whether or not you want to decide to continue to pursue the positive path or the negative path. And it really comes down to philosophy, and that's why I'm saying it's a war in perspective. It's just a matter of taking on the proper positive philosophy to start to break free from some of this. And we've been enslaved by our own free will, it says. And they also say later that examples of well-meant and unintentional slavery are so numerous that it beggars our ability to enumerate them, which would suggest that this being enslaved by our own free will has been very successful, very extensive on our planet. And it's a lot of things we don't even think about. But it's a big deal to understand that it's just the philosophy that we have to question. Is this a philosophy of control that we're dealing with, or a philosophy of acceptance and love? And we can gradually shift everything we've been programmed with that relates to control over to acceptance. This relates to being in the middle of the proxy war that Corey has mentioned, and the Law of One also calls this a thought war. There's a thought war going on where positive and negative beings are sending thoughts and positive energies to us, through us, to try to have an influence. Corey Good said the Anshar, the inner earth people, are doing this. They're sending telepathically good thoughts and trying to give us a little bit of assistance. And our ancient history shows many examples of cosmic battles. We know there's been a lot going on. We've seen ancient aliens. There's many things that express that reality. And there's a lot of dark entities, even ceremonies that have been done by the cabal to bring in more of this negative influence. But there's also miraculous events on the other side of the spectrum. A lot of religiously inclined people, a lot of spiritual people have had many miraculous things. Many positive beings have been engaging with us too. And the Law of One talks about basically different races helping out with UFO technology, advanced technology, on both ends of the spectrum, positive and negative, a little bit of assistance in this behind-the-scenes technology development. Corey Good and Bill Tompkins also described how even like the Nazis benefited from some negative ET tech. But this thought war in the Law of One, they say that it's being fought between the Confederation and Orion group. And to understand this, they say, picture your mind, picture it in total unity with all other minds of your society. You carry a weak electrical charge, but with the society, it now becomes an enormously powerful machine whereby thoughts may be projected as things. In this endeavor, the Orion group charges or attacks the Confederation arms with light. The result, a standoff, as you would call it, both energies being somewhat depleted by this and needing to regroup. The negative depleted through failure to manipulate, and the positive depleted through failure to accept that which is given. This is a very important point, that the way that they are motivated, the way that their energy to act works is based on the need to manipulate on the dark side and the need to accept that which is given on the light side. And this may seem counterintuitive, that this acceptance is something that gives them power, because sometimes people think that acceptance is essentially giving over, but it's not, and I'll talk about that more. Also, they say that this is only happening between the fourth density beings, the fifth density and sixth density. They say, don't engage. And they say the fourth density is the only density besides your own which, lacking the wisdom to refrain from battle, sees the necessity of the battle. And this is because the point of the war is not to win the war. It's the growth and understanding that comes with the struggle that we're in. And that's why these way more powerful beings just sit back, because they know that all those people who are involved, all those beings involved in this war, they're getting benefit. They're growing. This is all a process of evolving back to the Creator. But the higher entities do assist with what we could call a quarantine. Basically, there's free will's principles in play at not allowing too many negative entities to come into our planet. And they say to not obey, quarantine, I should say physically come to our planet. On the metaphysical mental level, there are other rules there. To not obey quarantine after being hailed on the level of which we speak would be equivalent to your not stopping upon walking into a solid brick wall. And they're a little bit vague about this. They say this is due to the power of the Law of One that's possessed by the Guardians, the sixth density above beings. I'm going to take another step back here and talk about the power of love through understanding, how love is the source of all motivation. They start out saying that the first distortion, the least distorted principle in all of creation is free will, which works on infinite awareness. But then the second distortion is love, which is like this infinite energy that creates everything out of free will. And light is what comes from love acting on free will. It's all the manifestations, all the dimensions, everything we're experiencing comes from love acting on free will in this cosmology. One of the questions Don asked was, if we get more into polarity, get more down a path of love and service, is it harder then to retrace the steps and go back the further you are along? And Ross says, no, that's not the case. The further you have polarized, the more easily it is to change polarity, because the more power and awareness you will then have. And of course, the power is expressed differently. The power on the positive path is not about controlling others. It's about, accepting, and really it comes from service. It's because we have chosen to serve each other that the planet becomes a better place. And when our egos aren't in the way of our service, we can do a lot more. it's much, much easier to work together, to collaborate, to see a lot more get done when we have this pure motivation coming from the positive polarity. So they say those truly helpless are those who have not consciously chosen a polarity, but who repeat patterns without knowledge of the repetition or meaning of the pattern. And so they also call this the sinkhole of indifference. And I've made this graphic here to show that basically this line that you see curved line going through, shows basically how you have more personal power as you approach the service to other side and as you approach the service to self side. And they say that the fourth density is above this green line. Once you reach a certain level of polarity, this is really just an amount of either opening the heart to have this heart energy to maintain this higher density consciousness, or closing down the heart on the negative side. Very few people have done that, but that has happened on this planet. They still say this is a much more positive planet than negative planet. This graduation is going to be a very positive thing. But the hard part is the sinkhole of a difference in the middle, where people don't realize why they don't have power. It's because they're not making a choice. So there's a little bit of confusion here around the word love. Even the Greeks, there's no consensus on how many words they actually had for love, because of how nebulous the word has become in our culture sometimes. They had the eros for sexual love, agape for love for God. But ultimately in the law of one, the love is considered this infinite energy behind everything. Love is the enabler, the power, the energy giver. And they also say that, there's an activity called loving, which is what we normally identify with the fourth density consciousness. And that's the verb form, but there's the noun form, which is the source of the loving. The love is using all of the light. So it's like, what I'm talking about is more the noun form, which is this fundamental source of energy. But it's not always seen that way. Like if you're not expressing energy through your heart, you don't always think of that as love. There's a lot of metaphysical principles with the chakras, and how when you're expressing energy through your lower centers, through distortions relating to the way you view yourself, relating to the way you view other people and try to interact in society, that love is kind of stifled, but it's still there. It's just waiting to come up to the heart and really be unleashed and seen as love. But it's still the same energy. It's still the same love energy. And ultimately, that's what the negative do. They express love of self through the lower chakras by creating severe blockages to the possibility of service to others. So as I said before, love and service does not mean giving in. And I found a good example of this. It's kind of funny that, so Don Elkins found out about this idea, like love and service is, give me power, give me protection. And he was like, is there anything we can do for this negative entity who's been bugging us? So they were consistently having this particular, what they called the fifth density negative friend, basically, that was everything that they were experiencing that was like really confusing, like sharp pains, sharp illnesses that they couldn't understand. When they asked about it, they found out that it was accentuated by this negative entity, which was trying to stop what they were doing by accentuating pre-existing conditions and distortions. And they said there's great humor in your attempt to be of polarized service to the opposite polarity. There is natural difficulty in doing so, since what you consider service is considered by this entity non-service. As you send this entity love and light and wish it well, it loses its polarity and needs to regroup. Thus, it would not consider your service as service. So these are mutually exclusive definitions of service. So serving a negative entity is not giving in to what they want. It's essentially doing the opposite. When you can't serve it, and you have to serve the people who are open to that service. So a lot of what's going on here is throwing off the negative, even though it's a process of acceptance of each other and love of each other. In the process of that, we are throwing off the negative control structure, the negative philosophies and systems. So we've been tricked into thinking that love, forgiveness, and acceptance of others can be a weakness, and it represents a non-action for change. But it really represents a kind of freedom from the attachment to all these different systems that have been holding us back. In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of karma. Forgiveness is the key to getting over all this karmic baggage. And so forgiving even the darkest parts of our life, the darkest things that we see, it doesn't mean that we're allowing it to continue. It means that we're not being held back by it anymore. So the purpose of service to others polarity is effecting change, positive change for service to others. It's not allowing us to continue to be manipulated. And love also, this is part of the power thing. We can get psychic abilities. I mean, I think a lot of people have probably experienced that the more you get into your heart, the more you seem to open up to some type of intuitive energy. And there's a lot of guides. you don't need to always understand everything, because we have so much service available through these positive angelic guides that are always interested in helping us once we open our heart and are aligned with them enough for them to be able to come and work with us. And so I would say that there's a little bit of a deception going on where people are afraid that they have to be afraid all the time, afraid of everything, afraid of doing the wise thing and not necessarily the loving thing. And this is somewhat expressed in the Law of One when they say the fourth density abounds in compassion, but this compassion is folly when seen through the eyes of wisdom. It is the salvation, though, of third density. This compassion is the salvation of third density. So emphasizing the idea of there not being enough wisdom when you're experiencing a lot of love. Like, we do want to set boundaries sometimes when we have to. We can't always be giving into people. But ultimately, that does prevent us, when we're giving into people, from being of greater service to other people. And that's how you can always see boundary setting as being a positive thing, when you can be of greater service through that having happened. They say there was an example that was from Venus, basically, like, I think it was billions of years ago. They said when Ra was evolving in third density, like we are on Venus, there was an example of people who didn't like that things were going so well for a lot of people. I mean, they weren't necessarily going that well for some people, and they felt a lot of pity. And what I would say, pity is a very strong temptation sometimes that we need to question. It's like a red flag when we feel pity on other people, especially if those people have their heart open, and just they don't have the understanding or knowledge that we think that they need to have. We have to take a step back, because what happened on Venus was that these people thought that they were doing the right thing by trying to enforce a kind of belief system, essentially through what they said was a holy war. I mean, it's maybe echoed in our culture in much more dramatic ways. But they say that these people wound up on the negative polarity in their next life, and they were completely shocked, and they had to reverse and retrace what they were doing in order to recognize that this process of trying to push wisdom over love in the third density is not the right path. And again, like I said, when your heart is in the right place, assistance is always available through beings who are, and they over and over emphasize, this is not the plane of understanding. We don't always have to understand. We don't have to feel like we have to find the deepest wisdom, because the assistance is always available when we open our heart. We can always receive guidance and direct understanding. So Ra talked a little bit about some of the powers that you can get. I'm going to go back into the psychic area. Like the healing ability, like all paranormal abilities, is affected by the opening of the pathway or shuttle into intelligent infinity. This deals with unblocking the chakras. To others, there may appear to be miracles. To the one who has carefully opened the door to intelligent infinity, this is ordinary. This is commonplace. This is as it should be. The life experience becomes somewhat transformed, and the great work goes on. And basically, as this is a process of unblocking the chakras, the final step is the indigo ray, the pineal, where they say opened only through considerable discipline and practice, largely having to do with the acceptance of the self. Not only is the polarized and balanced self, and there's a lot loaded in there with, when they say polarized and balanced, they mean very much pursuing love, and very much working out through your own stuff, and balanced in the way that you view yourself, the way that you view others. Not only as the polarized and balanced self, but as the creator, as an entity of infinite worth. So being able to get from the concept of us being finite to being infinite is largely what this is about. Going beyond belief in you're not being worthy. Because all of us fundamentally are infinite beings and are worthy. And so this is the final step that we take to developing these abilities. Really letting that sink in. So the entity who penetrates intelligent infinity is basically capable of walking the universe with unfettered tread. And I'll give you an example of somebody who clearly was doing this in the modern era over and over. Was Neem Karoli Baba. A lot of people know about this guy through Ram Dass. He talked about him as his guru. There were many reports of this guy, like bilocating, being in two places at once, reading people's minds, and telepathy, and many amazing. He's called the Miracle Baba because of all the things that he was doing. No one even knows really where he came from when he was born. But some of the quotes from him, he was always emphasizing love is the key to enlightenment. He said, "Love is the strongest medicine. It is more powerful than electricity. Even if a person hurts you, give him love. The worst punishment is to throw someone out of your heart. You should love everyone as God. If you cannot love each other, you cannot achieve your goal. He said, meditate like Christ. Christ lost himself in love with every sentient being. I thought this was funny that this was a story that came from a group of Jews that went to visit him, Jews visiting a Hindu temple to learn about Christ. Another example I thought was really funny, my Catholic grandma, she had this magazine, and she's just like a really devout conservative Catholic, and she was showing me this magazine for another reason. I was flipping through it. I found this section written by a guy named Zlatko Sudak, and he was talking about basically gifts of the spirit, paranormal abilities basically. He said there's a gift of illumination that will result in a blue light coming out from your body at certain times during prayer. He talked about the gift of levitation and St. Joseph of Cupertino. And my grandmother had underlined these, like she wants to work on these. And she was telling me about the bilocation thing too. Like, do you know sometimes you can just appear in two places at once? It's like, wow. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is this is not just, isolated kind of teaching, that there are very spiritual people from all backgrounds who are clearly aware of this kind of thing, that as you really reach higher levels of love and humility, that these things start to open up. But ultimately, what can happen here is this can become like a carrot on a stick if you're pursuing abilities. And the Hindus have many, many texts about this kind of thing. It's not what we're here for. We're not here for the cities, the miracles. We're here to pursue self-awareness. So I think if we can maintain the perspective that, this process of seeking after something, always seeking in spirituality, seeking, it's always a process of learning more about ourselves too. And ultimately, the process of seeing ourselves through this and understanding ourselves is what this is about. So the carrot on the stick becomes the mirror on the stick, because this chasing is always chasing back after the self. Corey Good has also said, though, that ultimately our progress is not that far on the planet to reaching fourth density consciousness. He gave the number, I think, a couple of years ago, that there were only 300,000 ready, told to him by Ra to your air, that were ready for ascension. But this didn't include the ET souls, many of the new children coming in. And the Law of One basically said the same thing, that despite a lot of work being done, this planetary harvest will be much, much less than what the planet is actually capable of, comfortably capable of. So many beings, after we move into this higher density consciousness, will be coming from other planets, will be coming from elsewhere. And that means that a lot of people here might be going to a different planet, and I don't know the details about that. One thing we have to watch out for is the distortions around our ego, which the negative entities play on. I'll cover this briefly. They say that there's fourth density negative entities that are always kind of wanting to look for the low-hanging fruit with our consciousness and try to give us temptations. Temptations would represent something like moving away from love towards aggrandizement of the self, or aggrandizement of our social organizations with which we identify. So it always comes back to identity, where these strings are that they can pull on and try to manipulate us. They say that if these distortions towards basically identity are not successful, then they actually work in terms of the removal of light, trying to find a way to stop people from even be able to do positive work. But they always start out trying to tempt you into your ego. So I came up with a list of potential identity distortions that I think a lot of us are still working on. I know I am working on still some of these. We can be overly identified with our beliefs, overly identified with certain personalities and people, information. We can be overly identified with some of our past experiences. We can be identified with, overly identified with our achievements, our personal connections. We can be identified with our status, our astrological sign, the fact that we're a star seed. All these things are temptations to limit the way we view ourselves to a box. And by doing that, we become more open to this manipulation I'm talking about. We can be identified with future outcomes like the positive negative ascension, identified with certain thoughts, feelings, emotions. But yeah, the point is to always recognize the true self is way beyond any of these limited identity belief systems. And if we get too attached to any of them, then that can be a stumbling block. So there's some exercises, and these are easy just to read over and say, that sounds nice. But I spent a lot of time this year thinking about the exercises that they gave for polarizing. They say the prerequisite of these exercises is predilection towards meditation, contemplation, or prayer. So this is the kind of thing to work on during meditation and quiet periods. Number one exercise is that the moment contains love. And actually seeking the love in the moment, they say, is so central an act of will that even if you're somewhat insincere about it, that the friction due to insincerity is inconsequential because how important this is that we continuously seek the love in the moment. And they say the other exercises were to seek the Creator in yourself, see the Creator in others, and see the Creator in everything. But I'm going to break this down a little bit right now. So I first started thinking about this more. I was on a road trip with my wife and our dog, and it was really hot, and I was smelling something, and I was like, oh gosh, why am I experiencing this? And then I looked back, and the dog's breathing on me, and then I thought about, like, why? Oh yeah, we brought the dog because we love the dog. And so then, the smell reminds me of the dog. The smell reminds me of love. So this isn't about adding love to the moment. It's about finding the love that's already there. And understanding the truth about love is about tracing it back to the origin of creation, that everything is coming from love. Everything can be seen that way and understood as an expression of love. So ultimately, this exercise is like, first ask, what are you experiencing? And then what are the reasons behind this? For each reason, did that come from love? Or was it something else? If you're having trouble seeing anything coming from love, like, what's the reason? It kind of brings up the stuff that's really a blockage that maybe needs to be forgiven and worked on. And this is also when you're like, it turns to people, this is where seeing the Creator in others really helps out too. Like, you can ask, is this what I'm seeing in this other person really the truer nature of that person? And who or what is behind this person or thing that on a deeper level? And if you can't see the Creator, ask why. And then imagine, maybe that's not the true nature of what they are, and you can kind of separate that distortion in your mind from the truth about who they are. So one example I thought of for sharing was, like, I saw an interview with the guy who played the Emperor in Star Wars, and he said something like, a lot of people say I'm their favorite character, but I don't understand it. I'm supposed to be the most hated character. It's like I'm not doing a very good job. But you can see how the ability to see the actor behind that evil character is the key to loving everyone, because it's like it's not about that temporary illusion, distortion of the character playing out a role. It's about the truer Creator behind that. And even frustration, when you get frustrated, that's actually a good thing for polarizing, they say, because you can actually work on intensifying your frustration and anger and keep feeling more of that, because it's this random energy that's useful to you. Once you recognize this anger can be used to transform the way you think, to transform your energy, once you build it up to a point where the energy can be turned into either, if you're on the negative polarity, it turns into control. If you're on the positive polarity, it can be turned into an object of acceptance, understanding, and accommodation. The thing that you're angry about turns into an object of acceptance, understanding, and accommodation. Control is the key to negatively polarized use of catalyst. Acceptance is the key to positively polarized use of catalyst. A lot of what's going on here is just forgetting. We're kind of forgetting why we came here. They refer to the wanderers, the star seeds, as the brothers and sisters of sorrow, who are in incarnative states for the possibility of aiding other selves by the lightening of the planetary consciousness. That's the number one reason we're here, is the lightening of the planetary consciousness for a lot of us. The positively oriented wanderer chooses to hazard the danger of forgetting in order to be of service to others by radiating love of others. If the forgetting is penetrated, the amount of catalyst in third density will polarize the wanderer with much greater efficiency than you could actually have in the higher densities. So this is super useful to be here and be going through this. We're all very privileged to be able to be here and get this very intense catalyst of really working on ourselves and getting through this blockage. It's something that I think can be done in meditation, this blockage to remembering why we're here, what we're about. And it really does. You can ask yourself, like, what is the purpose of why I continue? It's something that is very, very subconscious that we don't always bring up. But if we really keep asking why in our lives, why are we doing these things, we can get back closer to to the truth about our being here for other people. And so since this is an uncensored conference, I thought I would share an herb with you guys. This is actually an herb that is most associated. It's called Calea Zacatechichi, most commonly. Calea ternifolia is the scientific name, or Mexican dream herb. This is very, very good for facilitating memory of your dreams. I've never come across anything close to this for dream recall. You can take this in capsules or tea, or you can smoke it before you go to bed, and you'll be able to remember your dreams way, way better. And it doesn't get you high. It gets you into like a relaxed state. And it also, when you're just meditating with this, a lot of benefit I've seen from working through subconscious traumas, subconscious issues through meditating and thinking about, why do I experience these things? So there's some warnings. Sorry for anyone from Louisiana. That's the only state it's not legal in is Louisiana. It's also not legal in Poland. Just throwing that in there because I wanted to transition into dreams, basically. I think dreams really bring us a lot of perspective on what we're going through. Dreams can always give you that extra insight of the metaphysical perspective on your life. Dreaming is an activity of communication through the veil that exists between the unconscious and conscious mind. In all cases, it is useful to ponder the content and emotive resonance of dreams. And also, for those whose heart is open, the green ray energy center is open, dreaming can take on a whole other activity which relates to precognition, knowing what is about to happen. So it's much easier to essentially travel throughout the timeline of your life in your dreams when your heart is open. And this is because they say in time-space, which is where you go when you can go when you're dreaming, all times are seen as simultaneous, just as in your geography, your cities and villages are all functioning, bustling, and alive with entities going about their business at once. So it is in time-space with the self. All of the times are available in your life for traveling. The nature of the penetration of the veiled portion of the mind may be likened unto the journey too rich and exotic to contemplate adequate describing thereof. And that really excites me that they're saying basically in this dream state, practically anything is possible. So this gets into timeline experimentation. I'm getting a little bit low on time. I had an experience back in 2016 where I woke up from a dream. It was a really profound dream. And it's like I could like read the minds of my family members. It was really intense, amazing energy after I woke up from this dream. It was like I could feel blood flowing through parts of my right hemisphere that I had never felt before. But what happened in this dream was it's like I was being shown future timelines by like a negative entity. And I was like, I do not want those timelines. I'd rather die than have those timelines. And I felt like I died, but then I woke up way in the past, and it was like I was seeing myself in the past and trying to give myself deja vu to make less aggressive choices. So I was presuming that this related to trying to change the timeline through going back instead of doing something now. I'm going to give some more examples of this, but Corey Goode has been talking about timeline experimentation a lot. He says the Anshar actually were coming from their future back to the past to try to make sure that their timeline is maintained because of negative entities trying to mess with the timeline. But this goes on to such a higher level because the law of one says that your higher self is already you from the future, all the way at the end. The higher self is like the map in which the destination is known. The roads are very well known. These roads being designed by intelligent infinity working through intelligent energy. The higher self aspect can program for the lessons and predisposing limitations of all these other incarnations if it wishes. But the rest is our free will. So it's like the higher self is setting up things that we might be going through, setting up limitations in our life that might help us go down the right path. It's still our choice if we want to go down that path, but there's still a lot of interplay here between future aspects of ourself and the present in order to, I guess, experiment with the timeline. That's the best way I could say it. Corey Goode has been hearing directly about the Mandela effect from the Blue Avians that explain that a little bit more. It's happening on a cosmic level, and that there are, way out in the cosmos, it's not just on Earth. There are things that have been edited out of our shared reality that we have no memory of now. This is what he was told by Ratia Ayer back in 2016. And to me, this suggests that like the timelines are merging because like the timeline that existed where this negative thing, maybe something on the scale of 9/11 he even mentioned, was removed, now people from that timeline are getting stuck back onto another timeline that was closer to that original timeline. So they feel like, with the Mandela effect, how many people have experienced the Mandela effect? The Mandela effect is basically people experiencing things that were like different from their childhood that they remember. Now, when you're seeing things, it's different. It seems like all of history was different than what you remember. It's because it seems like we were dropped onto a different timeline. Corey said when he was describing this to me, I saw a giant wall of crystal rods that were spinning and rotating, and in this prism effect, there were things like cars that were changing colors, and everything was changing. And he said, the Blue Avian said, this is a very big part of the shift that we're going through now, and that our co-creative consciousness is what's doing this. There's a synchronicity I noticed right when Corey started saying this. Allison Gee, who's actually got a workshop, I didn't even know, Sunday morning, she had a most incredible dream experience I've ever seen anyone write out. A very, very long, detailed report on our website. I'll share that in a second. But she said that she went to sleep for 3 hours and had a full three-day experience. It wasn't anything like a dream. It was like she was awake in another timeline. She has so many specific details from conversations and things she learned in this timeline. She learned that shortly after 1952, someone from the U.S. government did the right thing, and they already had disclosure in their timeline. And Corey Good said shortly after that, and I looked at the dates, like he must have filmed this conversation with the Blue Avians like right before she had her experience, and then it aired like right after she filmed about it. So it was like very clear synchronicity for me to notice. Corey said that we could all of a sudden be in a reality where we're post-disclosure. We really have no recollection of sitting here pining for disclosure. We're in it, and it could happen in a twinkling of an eye, and we would have no reference. There was an illustration that I created based on Allison Gee's timeline explanations. She said she was shown an image of like an hourglass where we all represent like grains of sand. All of us on our different timelines are like grains of sand, and we're going up through the bottleneck of ascension to try to get up through with this one event that apparently it's hampered by the existence of too many timelines that have been, I guess, out of control. And they said it's all of us, all the versions of ourselves from all timelines working together towards the ascension bottleneck. Just like all the sand in the hourglass eventually falls down to the bottleneck, so too does all of time and everyone in it essentially ascend up through the densities. Ra said that as one approaches the boundary of the densities, an effort must be made to cross that boundary. So I was thinking this might be connected to that too. But this is really trippy that Benjamin Fulford even, he hardly ever reports on crazy stuff. He's always talking about geopolitical affairs. And he just last week, I was like, I got to include this, mentioned the same thing. He said that he was visited by plasma beings, and he took a picture of them. He said that he was told by them that there were some alternate realities where humans were already exploring and colonizing other stars. He said that these entities also said that these various different scenarios are being morphed into one. It's just like what Allison said, and just like what Corey was saying. And that's why people with memories of different histories suddenly find themselves, quote, stranded on this planet in this particular reality. So Corey also said, though, that we can collectively create these effects. He said, Ratu Air made it very clear to me that a very small number of us, a very small number of people can act as a rudder for the rest of our collective consciousness, because everyone else is in such a disarray that the people like us and other people awakening and coming together, we have more power in our co-creative capabilities than we realize. And when 2, 3, or 4 people start getting together and focusing on a positive intent, we can create that positive future. So this is partly why I made the app. Mass Meditate is the name of the app on the iOS and Android store. And I also wanted to mention that there's this is connected with the New Earth Network, social network that I made. So there's like a map on there. You can put on a meditation group if you want, and get connected locally with other people through the software that's on that website, massmeditate.org. And joindisclosure.org is another site that I recently made with the same kind of features, just for the purpose of letting you post more disclosure-oriented groups in your area and getting connected. Now, I do also recommend starting a meetup group, meetup.com. There's a lot of people on meetup.com, and my website actually, the New Earth Network, pulls in all of the existing meetup groups through the community regions. But there are so many things already going on you might not be aware of. If you look at meetup.com, still the best resource for getting to get connected with people like us in your area. So I'll end it here. I'll leave it with one of the quotes that Ra would often end their statements, their sessions with. We leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing and glorifying in the power and in the peace of the one infinite creator. And thank you all.
Hey guys, this is Ben from Edge of Wonder with Mike Waskosky, and we are at Dimensions of Disclosure, and you just had an amazing talk that you gave. And for our live stream people who are watching, there's a few questions that came up. But how was this experience for you, and what was it like being on stage?
It's amazing. It's like, I'm super nervous going up, and then suddenly the energy just feels like all this love coming at me, and it's really wonderful. It's a lot easier to do it than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually the same thing for us, like, even for myself before I go on stage. It's like once you're on there, you feel the energy, and you're just like, yeah, it's just a great feeling overall.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's start with some questions. So John Ferdini-Ani, dude, he's been actually one of our big supporters for Edge of Wonder, but he says he wants to know, what kind of meditation do you do, Mike?
A variety of things. I mean, it depends on how I'm feeling. One of the most helpful things you can do is simply try to quiet your mind. And for that, I recommend recognizing that all the things that you're like holding on to, it's like you can question, would I rather have peace than this? And that's a question I often like to ask myself in meditation. Is this really peace? Would I rather have peace than this? And then I can gently begin to quiet things down over time. But there are other meditations, like very often I'll feel inspired by something, and it's kind of like a download. A lot of us will be getting downloads and feel inspired by something, and to remember what that was, and then go think about that more and expand that download in your meditation. That's a really good type of meditation too.
Awesome. Somebody asked, and I'm sorry the name was covered up, but they're asking what you think about the Mandela the Mandela effect. Is the Mandela effect is actually a timeline experimentation? That's what the question was asking.
I wonder that sometimes. I really don't know, but I assume that different timelines have slightly different versions of the law of one. And Alison Gee, and her website, newparadigmplanet.com, she actually said that she questioned about that. What is the law of one in this timeline? And they said in this timeline, it lasted until 1985. And that Don Elkins didn't commit suicide. It was a much more gentle process. And it was kind of amazing. I
tell you, the Mandela effect is the one that's been like messing with me from day one. When we started really diving into it, I was just blown away by all the stuff we were finding too. Yeah. So then Jill Rose is wondering, are there any LLO study groups located in regional local areas? And if so, how do we find them?
Chances are you should try to create one, but there was an effort done through bringforth.org. If you look at the forums on bringforth.org, there are people talking about trying to create groups. So you might be able to find some people who have already gone down that path if you look at those forums. That's like the official forums of the LL research organization that's behind the Law of One.
And Cheryl Lynn Sherman is asking, what's your favorite part of Law of One?
I mean, it's really hard to say, but I guess I could say my favorite part is the part about the archetypes, which is like book 4. It's like you can never get to the bottom of what all is being said there, because it's like all of evolution can be summarized through these metaphors that they've presented in the major arcana tarot, but you can continuously get research data out of them by thinking about it more and more and what those symbols mean. It's but I mean, in a practical level, I've been very benefited by thinking about the chakra system and just understanding the general way that energy works in the metaphysical dimensions, and the way that the metaphysics really has the same type of laws as tightly as physics does. There are still metaphysical laws that are, once you understand them, it's much easier to work on your stuff.
Awesome. Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Hey, you guys, how you doing? So, hey, I just wanted to tell you, Mike, I've been watching the live stream while you were doing your presentation, and people here loved everything that you did, and I saw tons of people saying that they were going to rewatch your presentation just because they really wanted to get it to sink in, and there was just a lot of love for what you're doing and everything, and I just wanted to let you know. So,
Thanks.
yeah, I hope you know, like, it's great work, and we really appreciate everything you're doing.
Yeah, and the app that you're developing, people are really excited about that. So,
Us all coming together to meditate, right?
yeah. So tell us, I mean, real quick, tell us like where people can find that, and for people just coming on to the live stream, because a lot of people coming and going.
Massmeditate.org is the website, and there's links right at the top to go to the iOS app or the Android app, or you can search in the App Store for Mass Meditate. And I'm going to keep updating this app with great content, all the great meditations going on, and you can submit your own mass meditations. And if you got really high quality meditations you want to turn into a mass meditation that we'll all do together, I'm open to that.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much. It's great listening to you. Best of luck to you and your app. And you guys, until the next speaker, we'll see you out at Dimensions of Disclosure.